paradrama tales.
I was told I wasn't needed at Thanksgiving. We're keeping it small this year, Dad said. But when I saw their photos, smiling around a table, I wasn't invited to. I stayed silent, wired their $2,900 mortgage, then canceled his card. What would you do in my place? 3 days before Thanksgiving, my phone rang just as I was finishing up at the office, a cold, late afternoon buzz that felt out of place. I answered on the third ring, bracing myself. "Hey, sweetie," Dad said, his voice calm, almost casual. "We're keeping it small this year, just immediate family for dinner." Immediate family. Those words landed like an icy gust. I'd pictured the golden turkey, the laughter spilling into the living room, the proud nods when I walked in the door. Now it was clear. I wasn't part of that picture. "Small?" I managed, my voice uncertain. "Like, where should I sit?" "Oh, honey," he sighed. "You know, we've got enough at the table without you this year. Thanksgiving's always been about who's under one roof." I closed my eyes against the sting. Thanksgiving, my least favorite holiday since college, when they'd skip my inaugural Thanksgiving to attend my brother's lacrosse tournament. But somehow I'd hoped things would change. "Okay," I said, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I understand." "I knew you would," Dad replied. "And don't forget, the mortgage payment is due soon, $2,900 on the 1st. We really appreciate your help." Help, not love, not support, just help. I stared at the ceiling tiles, the fluorescent hum echoing in my cubicle. "Of course," I whispered. "I'll take care of it." That evening, as I walked the city streets back to my apartment, my breath vaporizing in the night air, I replayed that call. 13 rings, all to remind me I wasn't welcome at home, but still expected to fund it. At home, I brewed a mug of cheap coffee and sat at the kitchen table, wallet open, autopay on the mortgage app glowing back at me. For nearly 3 years, I'd covered their house payment while they refused to confirm my place at their own table. Each month felt like a quiet sacrifice, something I told myself I did out of love. Tonight it tasted like frostbite. I thumbed through my bank statements, 12 consecutive payments, each one a silent apology for unspoken sins. 12 months of gratitude I never received. 12 deposits into someone else's comfort. 12 reminders of my own exclusion. The next morning, at 7:43 a.m., I decided to stay silent, just for a moment. When Dad's text appeared, asking again if I was still covering our mortgage, I took a steady breath and tapped no. Then I canceled the payment. My phone stayed quiet for exactly 4 hours and 19 minutes. Then, like an avalanche, the calls and texts began. Voicemails piled up. Dad's panicked pleas, Mom's shaky apologies, my sister's angry accusations calling me selfish and ungrateful. But I didn't answer. I let each buzz echo against the walls of my apartment, reminding me that I'd finally broken free of their silent contract. For once, I felt something unclouded by guilt, a fierce, exhilarating relief. That chilly Thanksgiving call marked the end of being their invisible safety net. And although I still felt the ache of their absence, I realized something new. No table, no roof, no family expectation could ever define my worth again. That Saturday afternoon, while I was grabbing a latte between meetings, a notification flickered on my phone, an Instagram story from Mom. Curiosity wrestled with dread as I tapped it open, and there it was. The Preston family's Thanksgiving spread, laid out in all its golden glory. The dining room glowed with warm light. The long mahogany table heaped with turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, green beans, and pies that could feed an army. Every seat was filled, Mom in her festive sweater raising a glass of wine, Dad leaning back in his chair mid-laugh, Sarah nestled next to her boyfriend, the neighbors squeezed in at the far end, and even Aunt Carla from up the street, her perfect holiday smile on full display. Not a single empty chair betrayed my absence. My breath caught in my chest as I scrolled through the next photo. A close-up of Mom and Dad's family toast, wide smiles that didn't reach their eyes. I felt the sting like icy rain. While I'd been named last minute to foot their $2,900 mortgage bill, they'd invited everyone but me to their golden feast. My fingertips hovered over the screen, mind racing through every time I'd asked about the guest list. Always just immediate family. Every quiet excuse they'd offered about keeping it small when really they were expanding it to include neighbors and hangers-on, but not their own son. I felt a hollow churn in my gut, brewed from months of silent sacrifices that had never earned me so much as a thank you. Glancing up at the neon cafe sign, the world around me muffled into insignificance. My position at work, my next meeting, the crisp fall air, all drowned out by the roar of that silent betrayal. I tucked the phone in my pocket as if the act could bury the pain, but the ache followed me out the door and into the noise of the city. By the time I reached my car, my fingers were shaking so badly I almost dropped my keys. All around me, families gathered for their own celebrations, oblivious to the fracture in my heart. I drove home on autopilot, each stoplight a reminder that I was the invisible linchpin holding their home together, unwanted at the table, yet the lone guarantor of their roof. Pulling into my garage, I realized I'd been clutching my wallet the entire drive, an unconscious reflex to keep my provider role close, even though it felt like chains. That night, I lay awake replaying every Thanksgiving in my mind, the empty chair at Grandma's, the forced cheer with strained smiles, the cashiered hope that this year would be different. And as the hours ticked by, an ember of resolve sparked. I would no longer feed their gluttony with my loyalty or my cash. Tomorrow, I decided, I would be the one to dine on freedom. Every month, without fail, I watch my phone light up with that familiar reminder. Mortgage payment due, $2,900. At first glance, it seemed routine, as routine as my morning coffee or the rush hour commute. But beneath its banal surface lay a chain I'd been forging around myself for nearly 3 years. Each payment felt like an invisible link snapped into place, binding me tighter to a family that only called when they needed my wallet. It began the winter Dad lost his job. He'd called me, voice low, explaining how he had a plan, but just needed my help covering the mortgage for a month or two. So, I transferred the funds, telling myself it was temporary. Then the next month, and the next. Point 1. I became their silent guarantor, wiring almost $35,000 of my savings into their bank account, all under the guise of helping family. The text threads that confirmed each transfer, "Thanks, kiddo," from Mom. "You're our rock," from Dad, now read like cruel jokes. As time passed, those reminders morphed from assistance to expectation. The same gentle nudge, "Hey, did you remember the payment?" arrived alongside invitations to family events I was always told were too small for me. Their contradiction cut sharper than any blade. I was needed when the checkbook opened, but not when they gathered around the table. Point 2. The mortgage became a symbol of my worth in their eyes, valuable only insofar as I kept the lights on in their home. That illusion began to fracture the moment I saw those Thanksgiving photos. I realized I'd traded freedom for their false gratitude. Sitting in my apartment that evening, I replayed every time I'd refused a night out or skipped a vacation so I could pinch pennies and pay their bills first. I'd been enriching their comfort at the cost of my own dreams. The invisible chains of love they wrapped around me were in fact cables of control. Yet, breaking free wasn't simple. Each canceled auto payment felt like sawing through a link in that chain. Each notification of payment failed sent their panic into a spiral, and mine into a storm of guilt and relief. Finally, I understood point 3. No bond forged by money can substitute for genuine respect. If they truly loved me, they would have shown up at my door months ago, not waited until their bank balance dipped. By the 4th failed transfer, the pattern was unmistakable. My kindness was a resource to be exploited, not cherished. The mortgage reminders, once benign, had become the rhythm of my sacrifice, and the music stopped the moment I hit cancel. I wasn't just canceling their payment, I was severing the last tether linking me to their entitlement. That night, I lay in bed listening to the silence where so many demands once echoed. The mortgage was no longer an invisible chain. It was a relic of my own making, finally broken. And in that space, I felt something I hadn't in years, the exhilarating crackle of freedom. When Dad's text blinked across my screen the next morning, "Still covering our $2,900 mortgage, right?" my heart sank into that familiar pit of obligation. I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I stared at the message for a long moment, tasting the bitterness of every month I'd sacrificed for their comfort. Then, in a quiet whisper to myself, I typed, "Absolutely," hit send, and did nothing else. I slid my thumb up to the banking app, that digital portal I'd come to both rely on and resent. The automatic transfer to their account loomed in the upcoming scheduled payments list. My finger hesitated over the edit button, every muscle in my hand trembling with both fear and anticipation. What would happen if I removed that link, if I severed the last promise I'd ever made to them? With a final decisive tap, I canceled their mortgage autopay. A confirmation screen glared back at me, demanding I acknowledge that I understood the repercussions. Mortgages missed carry penalties. Credit scores tumble. Utilities risk shut-off. I pressed yes, my pulse pounding in my ears, and watched as the commitment vanished from my schedule. Silence followed. No instant notification popped up. No resignation from my bank. Just a small on-screen message. Recurring transfer has been canceled. My chest tightened, equal parts dread and relief pooling there. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of every dollar I'd wired over the last 36 months suddenly lift off my shoulders. I went about my morning routine mechanically, brewing coffee that tasted like cardboard and slipping into my office. But my phone stayed tucked into my pocket, vibrating quietly with every breath I took. I refused to check it. I wanted those first few hours to stretch out, to let Dad wonder, to let their world shift just a fraction before the full tremor hit. At noon, a faint buzz, a missed call from Dad. 45 minutes later, another. Then 2 texts back to back. Can you check on the mortgage? Did you see my text? Please call me. My stomach knotted. The first tendrils of their panic were curling around me, but I ignored them. I had given myself permission not to respond, permission I'd never dared grant until today. By mid-afternoon, there were 6 missed calls, 2 voicemails. I listened briefly to Mom's trembling voice. "Sweetheart, this must be a mistake." And Dad's clipped, frantic plea. "I need you to fix this right now." Their panic sharpened the ache I'd carried for years, but now it fueled something different, the fierce warmth of self-respect. That evening, I closed my laptop and let the day's tension melt away over a quiet walk. As dusk fell, I checked my banking app again out of habit. There it was, no outgoing $2,900 payment scheduled, no looming deduction poised to bleed me dry. Instead, an empty slot, a blank space pregnant with possibility. In the days that followed, they leveled every weapon they had, guilt trips, angry messages, frantic phone calls at dawn, but I remained silent. My cancellation was my message. I would no longer bankroll their illusions of family, nor would I stand on the sidelines of their celebrations. This silent reply, and the cancellation that followed, was the turning point. It wasn't vengeance. It was a boundary drawn in steel. For the first time, my worth wasn't measured in dollars transferred at their request, but in the simple fact that I chose myself. And in that choice, I found a peace I thought I'd sacrificed forever. By the time the bank confirmation pinged on my phone, I was already drafting the next moves. Their mortgage was no longer my burden. Now it was time for the triple strike: card, car, credit. First came Mom's platinum credit card, the one I'd co-signed just in case. I called the issuer, my voice measured as I reported unauthorized use and canceled the card on the spot. Effective immediately, the agent confirmed. I could almost hear Mom's gasp through the screen as her automatic shampoo subscription, her weekly flower delivery, and those impromptu self-care charges vanished overnight. That soft jingle of denial echoed louder than any thank you I'd ever received. Next up was Sarah's cherry red SUV, a gleaming beast I'd guaranteed so she could build credit after graduating. The dealership service manager answered my call with concern. "Are you sure, sir?" And I was. "Voluntary repossession," I said, and a tow truck arrived within 2 days. I imagined Sarah's Instagram feed freezing as the license plate swung past the curb, her pride hitching a ride with the winch. It wasn't about the money, really. It was about teaching her what happens when promises go unpaid. But the final stroke was the one that cut deepest. I contacted the credit bureau and placed a freeze on both their histories. I set it up so that any attempt to open a new account, take out a loan, or even check their scores would bounce back with a stern denial. Their panic-stricken voicemails flooded in within hours. Dad pleading for a one-time lift to the freeze, Mom begging me to uncancel the card, just long enough, Sarah screaming that it was ruining her life. They were learning belatedly what it felt like to be the customers from hell, unreachable, unhelpful, unbending. Each morning, I woke to an avalanche of missed calls, 23 on Monday, 47 by Wednesday, and each evening I read their plaintive texts. This was a mistake. Please, this is our home. You're being so cruel. Their words stung, but they no longer held sway. With every automated alert of a blocked transaction, every tow truck receipt, every rejected credit check attempt, I felt a little lighter, stripped of obligation, freed from the lie that my role in their lives was to bankroll their comforts. Meanwhile, a hush fell over their world. Utilities threatened shutoffs, loan officers calling to reschedule appointments, neighbors whispering as they passed the now empty driveway. No more smooth reassurance from me that everything would be fine. I had become the silence they feared, absent, unyielding, final. This triple strike wasn't vengeance. It was boundary. It was learning to safeguard my own future after years of invisible sacrifice. And as their world buckled, I discovered something remarkable, the fierce peace that blooms when you stop giving what isn't appreciated. Dawn's first light was barely creeping through my blinds when my phone erupted. A cacophony of missed call alerts that blinked accusingly at me. 53 in total, each one a frantic bid for my attention. I sat up in bed, heart racing not from the discomfort of my restless sleep, but from the cold realization that their panic had reached a fever pitch. 20 calls from Dad, breathless voicemails alternating between icy fury. "Explain yourself!" and desperate pleas. "Please, honey, we need to talk." Threats of foreclosure punctuated by tearful apologies. 15 from Mom, her voice quivering so badly I could almost hear her mascara. Running, begging for just 1 minute to make it right. Promising that if I'd only unfreeze the credit, she'd sell her essential oil inventory, even take another job. 18 from Sarah, oscillating between shrill outrage, "You ruined my life," and feeble attempts at guilt-tripping. "We were a family once. How could you?" As if her entitlement were stronger than basic decency. I lay there, counting the missed calls like tally marks on a prison wall, feeling the strange calm of someone who finally no longer carries the weight of everyone else's mistakes. Behind each ring had been another demand. "Cover our mortgage. Uncancel my card. Help me with the car." They'd never asked me to come to Thanksgiving. Now they begged me to save them from themselves. But I was done. Done with the silent servitude, the invisible labor of propping up their comforts while they treated me like an ATM. I let the phone buzz in my hand, ignored the vibration pulsating against my palm. A notification popped up. Voicemail from Dad. I tapped it, but paused. His voice, panicked and raw, cut through the stillness. I don't know what happened, sweetheart. The bank says the payment was canceled. We have no power, no water. Sarah's car has been towed. We're on the street. His words trailed off into sobs. Next, Mom's voicemail. "Why would you do this to your own family? We gave you everything." And Sarah's, "You're selfish, ungrateful, a monster. Everyone hates you now." My throat tightened, not from regret, but relief. For the first time, I wasn't the villain in their story. I was the protagonist reclaiming my own life. I placed the phone on the nightstand and swung my legs over the side of the bed, feeling the soft carpet underfoot like the beginning of a new day. Outside, the world moved on, cars rushing by, birds calling to breakfast, the hum of life indifferent to the chaos I'd unleashed. My phone continued to buzz, relentless reminders of their panic, but I let it lie. I had chosen peace over obligation, boundaries over broken promises. And now, as the sun rose higher, I realized something profound. I had survived their storm. My heart, once heavy and wounded by their disregard, felt lighter than it had in years. Today I would answer exactly 0 calls, because some lessons only land when the silence is absolute. And in that silence, I would finally find freedom. By mid-morning, my phone had finally fallen silent, but my fingers were still trembling with adrenaline, and with resolve. I opened my messages app and scrolled back through weeks of harmless check-ins. Dad's offhand texts reminding me about rent. "Hey, champ, mortgage is due next week." Mom's bubbly, "Good morning, love you." Emojis tacked onto photos of her latest essential oil haul. Sarah's casual invites. "Housewarming this Friday. Hope you can make it." Each read receipt lurking beside them felt like evidence of their quiet entitlement. Proof that they'd seen every message, never once followed through on any real question or care for me. I realized then that words alone weren't enough. I needed to arm myself with indisputable digital proof. That's when I remembered Mrs. Carmichael next door, the neighbor who always snapped candid shots of my family BBQs and holiday dinners to post on Facebook. I opened a new chat, kept it light. "Hi, Mrs. C. Hope you're well. Did you get any good pics at Thanksgiving this year? Missed out. Would love to see everyone." Her reply was almost instant. "Oh my gosh, yes. I have a few from when I came over. Give me 10. Within minutes, she'd sent 7 high-res images. My parents laughing over heaping plates. Sarah curled up on the couch with her boyfriend. The neighbors in matching smiles. Everyone, that is, except me. My chest tightened as I stared at each photo. The screen glowed like a spotlight on their deceit. I saved them all into a discreet family truth album, and then drafted a message to Mom. Simply one image of Dad raising his wine glass, captioned, "Had fun without me, huh?" I hesitated for only a heartbeat before hitting send. Moments later, my phone buzzed. Read 10:43 a.m., and then the downward spiral began anew. Dad's frantic, "What is this? Explain yourself." Text exploded across the group chat, followed by Mom's pleading, "That was posted by mistake," their words laced with panic rather than apology. Sarah lit into me with a venomous, "You embarrassed us," but her anger only confirmed my point. I refused to respond. Next, I posted one of the candid shots on my own Facebook feed. No filters, no apology, just the image of Mom's forced smile at the table and a caption. "Not on the guest list, but sure paid the bills for your small family Thanksgiving. Guess I'm a ghost to the people who needed me most." Notifications pinged almost immediately. Shocked friends, curious coworkers, distant relatives weighing in. Some offered condolences, others shared their own stories of being the family ATM. The group chat lit up into a frenzy of accusations, my parents gasping for leverage, Sarah attempting to deflect by tagging me selfish. But the comments section of my post told a different story. Validation, support, outrage at my family's hypocrisy. By afternoon, I collected every screenshot, messages begging for the mortgage money, promises of next time that never came, Sarah's boastful "family is everything" post from 2 weeks earlier, and compiled them into a tidy PDF titled Family Ledger, Debts and Denials. I drafted a single-sentence email to my parents. "We need to talk. Please review this before replying." I attached the document and pressed send. The knowing silence that followed was electric, a digital drumbeat that echoed louder than any phone call. In that moment, I realized the power had shifted. These screenshots, these photos, were not just proof, but my shield and sword. I hadn't broken them, I'd freed myself. And from friendly check-ins to fiery confrontations, the truth was now indelible and irreversible. I rolled up to their 4th of July barbecue just after the first burgers hit the grill. Their lawn was festooned in red, white, and blue bunting, and every neighbor from Mrs. Carmichael next door to old Mr. Reynolds at the corner was there, mugs of lemonade in hand, waving and smiling as if I were the returning hero of some small-town pageant. Dad spotted me first, his grin so wide it looked like a grimace. "There he is! Our boy who always helps us out," he crowed, patting me on the back hard enough to jolt the picnic table. Mom fluttered forward, her painted-on smile quivering. "We're so happy you could make it," she chirped, looping an arm through mine. Sarah lounged in a lawn chair, iced tea in hand, her boyfriend at her side, both beaming at the guests. I breathed deeply, tasting smoke and sunshine, and something bitter in the air. This was their moment to show me off. "Look how grateful our son is," they must have planned to crow, before returning to business as usual, me as the invisible ATM. But today I wasn't their prop. Today, I was the truth. I slipped my phone from my pocket and hit play on a slideshow I'd uploaded overnight to a neighbor's borrowed projector. The screen flickered to life against the side of the garage. First came the Thanksgiving table, my empty seat glaringly obvious. The laughter in that photo was almost audible. Next, Mom, wine glass raised, Sarah cuddled on Dad's lap, and half the block crowding in for a family portrait I'd never been allowed to join. Murmurs rose from the crowd. Faces went from delighted to startled. I watched as my parents' confident postures stiffened. Dad stammered, What is this?" As Sarah leapt up, her tea spilling over the edge of her plastic cup. Neighbors shifted uncomfortably, whispering among themselves. I raised my voice just enough to carry. "You said you wanted a small family Thanksgiving. You said you'd keep me out because it was just immediate family. But here you are, immediate family plus everyone else. And you never even offered me a plate." A hush fell over the yard. The grill's hiss and the cicadas' buzz seemed to fade away. Mom's face went pale. She opened her mouth, closed it, looked away. Sarah flushed and stared at her shoes. I clicked the remote. A cascade of screenshots appeared. Dad's, "Don't forget," the $2,900 mortgage. Mom's, "That card's for emergencies." Sarah's, "Here's the new SUV I'm driving, the Hi-Sis." Each message flicked across the screen like bullets, and with each one, I saw the neighbor's jaws drop a little further. "Family," I said softly, looking out at our neighbors, the very people so carefully curated for my parents' image, "is supposed to be more than just a list of who you can bleed dry." I paused, letting that sink in. Somewhere, a child dropped an ice pop. The sound cracked like proof. Then I turned and walked away, leaving my family to stare at their shamed reflections in the projector glow. I didn't linger for apologies, or for excuses. As I closed the gate behind me, the laughter and music inside sputtered into awkward silence. In that moment, I traded their mockery for my own freedom. The last thing I heard was Dad's helpless call of my name, but I was already down the street, tasting the cool evening air and feeling, for the first time in years, that I truly belonged to myself. That night, as I lay in my own bed for the first time since I'd been reduced to their safety net, a calm washed over me, the way a tide finally retreats after a storm, leaving behind only the footprints I chose to keep. I felt lighter than I had in years, unshackled from the expectation that love must be purchased and loyalty must be bankrolled. In that silence, I discovered something every one of us deserves to know. Respect is priceless, and boundaries are not walls but beacons guiding us toward healthier connections. I remembered my neighbors' faces, once so eager to celebrate our strong family, now sober with the honesty I served them under the summer sky. Their quiet recognition reminded me that truth, once spoken, ripples far beyond the moment of its release. So, today I stand here telling you, you are not defined by the roles you've been handed, whether that's the giver, the fixer, or the forgotten one, but by the courage it takes to rewrite your own story. If your heart aches with the weight of unreciprocated sacrifices, know this. The same strength that carried you through unpaid bills and unanswered calls can also carry you toward freedom. Don't let guilt or obligation steal another breath of your peace. It's never too late to say, enough, to reclaim your time, your energy, and your dignity. Share your own story below. Whether you've walked away, drawn a line, or simply found the words to ask for more. And let's build a community that honors both compassion and self-respect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe for more real-life journeys that remind us we are worthy of genuine connection, not conditional kindness. Hit the like button if you believe in the power of boundaries, and ring the bell so you won't miss our next video, where we'll explore how to heal the heart while navigating difficult family dynamics with grace. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that every act of self-care echoes outward, transforming our own lives and inspiring those around us to do the same.